She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
So Dani, tell me about your childhood.
My childhood is a mess. It's like so messy. I was raised in a home where violence was a daily occurrence. It wasn't a happy place. It was like super intense and violent. There was a ton of violence in my childhood. I was raised with 2 other girls. I was the oldest of 3. And we're all about 18 months apart. And unbeknownst to me, my mom actually was a teen pregnancy. She had told me my whole life through, my growing up years at home that she was a virgin on her wedding night with my dad, who wasn't my dad. And she also didn't have a great upbringing herself. So she was 17 when she got pregnant, ended up marrying my biological father. And they barely lived together. He was removed from my grandmother's house way before I was born, so I never met him until I was 18. And then my mom, about 6 months after I was born, met a man named Dan. Ironically, and he basically became kind of the surrogate dad and eventually adopted me when I was 8. But I didn't know that I was adopted. I didn't know that I was not his child, even though I looked quite a bit different than my sisters. I was Hispanic, and my sisters are definitely not. They were blondish, blue-eyed, light green-eyed, white skin. They look just like my mom and dad, and I didn't look like my mom at all, but I looked like this Nicaraguan guy. So anyway, the man that raised me was really like aggressive and violent. There was a lot of drugs, every kind of drug that you can imagine. I'm confident I had my first contact high from weed as a baby. There's no question. And then so all the prescription drugs and then cocaine, and all kinds of street drugs, whatever it is that they could get their hands on. And often they would spend like their welfare money on drugs, and even like trading out food stamp type stuff for drugs. And so I remember times where dinner was Wonder Bread and margarine and garlic salt. And if it wasn't for my grandmother that would bring, I can't even count how many times I remember my grandmother delivering big bags of groceries to the house because they were just completely out of food. My mom was 280 pounds and the man was 350, right? And there's 3 little girls. How do you do that on welfare? I mean, welfare today is totally different than it was back then. Like it was like, really, you live on pasta and rice and like not meats, stuff like that. So anyway, there's a ton of violence. I remember my mom being beaten to an absolute bloody pulp, like her eyes being all swollen, like the movie Rocky, with blood coming out of her eyes, with her teeth totally punched right out of her mouth, where she lost the 4 uppers and lowers. Being, the ambulance coming, there was just constant screaming. There was just constant physical abuse. Any one of us were being abused, for just being human. It wasn't even like we did something bad. It was, a little kid spills something and, and then bam, bam, bam. And I was punched. I was grabbed by the throat, shoved up against walls to be cursed at, kicked across the room with a size 16 shoe, meaning foot that fits in that shoe. So he was a huge man and super, super angry, like over the top angry. So I could tell you stories for hours about the kind of abuse that was in our home.
How did that make you feel as a little girl?
I felt like I was a burden. I felt like I was unwanted. I felt like I should have never been born. I felt like I definitely couldn't do anything right. I was terrified. I literally was terrified all the time. Like, afraid that I would do or say something that would provoke him. You know what I mean? Or afraid that my mom would do or say something that would provoke him. So it's just, I was very like pent up all the time, walking on eggshells. I mean, I wouldn't say that then, but that's, looking back, that's the feeling. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it's like not breathing deeply. You know what I'm saying? Just like, just terrified all the time, and scared. Just, I know that's the same word, but just, I don't know. There's just always so much trauma everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, just.
How many years did that go on?
Until I moved out of the house when I was 16. It's happened. This wasn't a once a month thing. He was in a bad mood. No, this was like every day in absolute terror that myself, I'm going to be like, have the crap beat out of me. I'm definitely going to be cussed out today. Or one of my sisters. And those are some of the hardest memories. Some of the hardest things for me to have worked through was not the abuse that I had personally to me, which was intense and crazy and no child should ever had, but it was the memories of my sisters, especially my youngest sister. And I think I felt totally like unable to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, to watch your 10-year-old sister like be just punched with a huge fist, or the towel bar taken off of a wall right off the sheetrock, and hearing the screams. Like, I'm in my bedroom and I'm hearing the crazy screams, and I run out because I hear that it's Marty, and you know, running down the hall to see what's going on, and here's this huge man in a small little bathroom just punching her, and he literally grabs the towel bar off and beats her head into the sheetrock. I watched my little sister's head go through the wall. I feel hopeless, that's the word. Felt just completely 100% hopeless. And also feeling like it's never gonna change. It's never, ever gonna change. This is it. You can't get out of it. You can't leave it. You can't, no one's helping. Nobody knows. You know, they threaten us all the time that, you know, if anyone ever found out, that it would be much worse than what it is. Also felt really neglected. Felt like I couldn't have a voice. I couldn't, I felt voiceless. And that I should have never been born. And I battled from suicide because of that, as even a little kid. So
at 16 years old, you leave the house after 16 years of that kind of violence and trauma and abuse. And those are the things that are in your head.
Yeah.
So what happens when you go out into the world after that childhood?
Well, honestly, what provoked me moving out was I was done being molested. I was molested the first time at 3 by a perfect stranger. You know, my mom, again, a drug addict, just smoking weed and popping whatever. And, you know, you leave a 3-year-old out in an alley, and a man picked me up and took me into his bedroom. I'll never forget that. And then my cousin picked up when I was 7 years old, just at a family gathering. It might have been Thanksgiving. It might have been whatever. You know what I mean? Some kind of a family gathering at my aunt's house. And then my dad when I was 13. And it was consistent. Like, he'd just keep coming to my room, and no matter how much I told my mom, you know, or no matter what I said, no matter what I did, and then I started to get super angry, like really angry. And I started to stand up to him, and my mom would say, okay, I'm going to leave him. Because, I mean, hello, how do you not protect your 3 daughters? And how do you not protect yourself, right? So, of course, from my perspective, that seemed like a logical thing to do, like, leave. Can we please leave? And so she said that she was, and we actually went to a hotel, and then she changed her mind. She went back, and I just told her, I said, I can't go back. I cannot, I'm not doing this anymore. That man's not coming in my room anymore. So can I leave? And she's like, yeah, go ahead. So from there, I ended up going up to school up in Oregon. And that was the best year of my life growing up. It was a private boarding school. We all lived in a dorm. It was like a high school that was private, and you know, my mom broke her neck when I was 11, so that changed our whole financial situation. She ended up with a settlement. So then they had money, but they were just as foolish with it as when it was welfare money. But one of the benefits is that it afforded for me to go off to school in Oregon at this little private Christian boarding school. And that was amazing, to be away from abuse, to not be cussed out every day, to not hear screaming every day, but to have like some freedom of thought, and to not. I battled with fear when I was still even living there. Fear that like somebody would sneak into which I had. That happened to me while I was up there, or I had somebody abuse me one time when I was in that school, but it was that next year was like, it wasn't even a year. It was like, I don't know, 7 months or something like that. Was the greatest part of my life at that time. And I had gotten closer to God, and just had a little bit of peace. I had a rest from all the abuse. And then, so obviously when school was out, I went back home and for about a week. And then I was on my own in my own apartment and making my own decisions and working 2 jobs and not even knowing, honestly, what kind of life I would have. Just wanting to not be beaten or verbally attacked or molested. So I didn't even think about like, what kind of a job do you want? What kind of a life do you want? I didn't even, it was more like, how do I just survive? And that was it.
So how did those thoughts and those feelings that you had as a little girl affect you as you got older?
Those feelings that I had as a little girl, as far as being terrified and useless and worthless and all of that, I mean, my life just kept echoing the truth, my truth, that's really what I was. I had a boyfriend when I was in the 8th grade all the way till high school, and we kept breaking up and being back together. And so when I left for school, we actually stayed in touch. And then when I came home, he had been having other girlfriends and stuff like that, and had been pressuring me to have sex since I was 14. And so June 28th of 1986, I finally buckled and we had sex, and I conceived my first baby. And again, trying to find my value, trying to show that I was worth something, and he would use those terms, like I'm worthless if I don't do this, and I'm nothing if I don't. This other girl did. Why won't you? Kind of thing. And so, I tried to find value in relationships with him, which led to several suicide attempts. Led to me being really mistreated by him. Eventually him like getting physical with me in a bad way. So yeah, those thoughts and those feelings just echoed again and again, that I'm nothing. I'm always going to be nothing. I started drinking really, really heavily, like heavily. Before I found out I was pregnant. Actually, I thought I might have hurt my child because I had alcohol poisoning, 3 times in a single week. That's like such an excess of hard alcohol that I was drinking, that I was trying to stop my mind. I was trying to stop those voices that were in my head that you should be dead, you're worthless, you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, no one's ever going to want you, nobody wants you. Like, it's not like no one wants you, it's like no one's ever going to want you. So I definitely tried to run from the thoughts, and slept with a lot of people, started smoking weed. I drank so much. Fortunately, I stopped drinking after I found out I was pregnant. That was like, I stopped everything that I was doing. But yeah, that's how that I was an easily manipulated young woman because I wanted so desperately to be valuable to somebody.
So now we fast forward 30 some odd years, and obviously that's not where you are now. So much.
And haven't been for decades.
So you went from being that little girl and that young woman who felt worthless, who felt like nobody would ever want you, take you seriously, listen to you. You didn't have a voice, to impacting millions of lives. What changed?
Honestly, I am shocked most of the time when I think about that. Like, how is that even possible? Like, how did that happen? And if I had to narrow it down to one word, it's God. That's it. Like, there's no other way you can explain it. My two sisters grew up in the same house I did. They did not have as much abuse as I did. They actually left the house when they were 13. I went through it for 16 years. They went through it for 13 years. And they made totally different choices. And so God, he truly rescued me. He truly gave me a chance. He truly revealed himself in the form of his love. I first found him through religion, and that was a painful thing. This was not a good thing. I mean, initially it was, but then all the religious crap that was put along with it that turned out to be so hurtful. And to be honest with you, more painful than any abuse I ever got from my dad was the abuse from the rejection of Christians. Was far more deeply painful. And so the way he revealed himself to me when I was homeless, when I just so screwed up my life so bad. And so he's the one who does it in us if we're willing to submit ourselves to him.
So I want you to talk directly to the person who is having those thoughts right now.
Those thoughts are honestly our choice. Like, when we're not aware that that's what's going through our head, we get beat up by it. And so when I rededicated my life to him, I just started like diving into trying to understand him and reading all the history about him through the Bible, and praying, talking to him, journaling a lot about those things. And so I began to, when I found that passage about hold every thought captive, like, I really took that seriously. I need to do that. Like, this would be a really important thing to do. And so I would hold every thought captive, and I just began this dialogue with him, and a lot through journaling, a lot and a lot of praying, and began to forgive. And that's what we got to do. Like, these voices that are talking to us, they're programs that other people have put in us, and then we take off with them and we just let them run. And it's kind of like a computer. It's this program that's running in the back of us, and we're not even paying attention that it's actually on. Kind of like the apps on our phone, right? So we have all these apps on our phone. They're draining our battery, right? Because we don't even know that they're open, but they're still running. They're processing back there. And that's exactly how it is. The stuff from our childhood that's processing, it's processing, it's processing, it's processing. And if you don't like what it's processing, you have to change what you're putting in. And so that I really began to reprogram myself through his word and through that time in prayer, to begin to start to believe what that word was saying versus what man had said about me versus what I believed about myself. I started to choose, because our beliefs are a choice. I started to choose that, no, this is what he says, and this is what he's about. And he's not my dad, meaning the dad that raised me, and he's not the dad that, didn't raise me, but he's the real father of me. And so I believe that when people choose to first think about what you're thinking about, what's going through your head, and if this is not producing or processing what you want in your life, then you have to make a choice, and that is to reprogram and start processing these new programs that you have in your head so that you can become who it is that you were originally designed to be. And I also believe that he uses all of the abuse for your good. That sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Like, all of the crap from my past and all the pain and all the villains and all the victimization that I did to myself, because I did become the victim all by myself. So all of that clearly is our choice to stay there. He uses circumstances to form us, to conform us to the image of his son, to develop us into something that's 10,000 times better than if we kept ourselves up to ourselves. If Disneyland was every day and everything was like super easy every day, we'd be a bunch of lazy pigs who are self-absorbed, arrogant, egotistical, bored, we would, right? So I truly believe like everything that's happened in my past and all of that abuse was to strengthen me to be the overcomer, strengthen me to believe in him, strengthen me to understand my own mind and to stop those thoughts in their track and replace them with something that I wanted to be versus what I had been. So, yeah.